Good morning, people.
Good,
Good morning,
good
good morning, good morning. Good
morning.
morning. Yes. Good morning, Pumi Mashiko. How you, Pums?
I thought I was gonna do without my glasses, and then I remembered I have to read the comments.
Oh my God. Did I tell you what happened to me yesterday? Oh, so while we were doing the show, this is so terrible. I managed to make it through, but by a ball hair. You know when you get you've had migraine. You've
God,
had migraine.
but
You've had a migraine, right?
yeah.
Before you get the actual headache, you start seeing in blurry, blotchy vision, like you can't read properly, you can't see properly. It's almost as if it's like you've got something in your eye, and you're unable to actually focus on what's going on. Your brain sort of goes like it's a
And
little bit fucked up.
like a pain over here, just
Well, the
behind the
pain
eye.
I mean, the pain starts a bit later, but I started having that whole. They called it an aura. It's actually a thing that they've done some
Oh
research
wow.
and documented now. So it's an actual well-known situation that develops for people who get me. I haven't had a migraine in ages, thank God, touch wood. But I started getting this thing yesterday while we were doing the show. So at like 5 to 7, and from then until the end of the show, I was like. And I mean, I think one of the commenters in the comment section said something like, Gareth, pull yourself together. You're having a stroke like Joe Biden or whatever. And I thought,
Nina.
no. I mean, listen, it's hilarious. If it's not happening to you, it's hilarious. So I totally understand.
It's
But
kind of like what happened to Wendy Williams. Do you remember when she
yeah, right, exactly. That's kind of, and because, we do 2 hours of every day of my life, 5 days a week, we're bound to eventually encounter something like this at some point during my existence. Luckily, this is the first time it's ever happened while I've been doing a live show. But my
shit?
God, I mean, I was struggling to keep it together until the end of the show. And we had a sponsored feature in there. And, you got to pay the bills. We're a business, not an NGO. I don't work for, a charity. And we had to keep it going. And it was really, really tough for me to concentrate yesterday to be able to say the words properly. And poor old Sean Sanders was on with Revix, and then we had a thing with Bar One that we were doing. And honestly, I was like struggling to even see what was happening on the screen. It was really, really fucked up. So I felt like I wasn't at my best yesterday. So if anybody heard it or saw it and thought it was stupid, I'm sorry. Happened.
I'm glad you're feeling better, my baby.
Yeah, look, I had these first time I ever had them was when I was varsity and at like age 19 or whatever. And then for a while they went away and they came back at some point. And I haven't had one, thank God, for a long time. But anyone who has migraines will know what I'm talking about. And it's not, people who have a normal headache think, oh well, migraine's just a really bad headache. But
Mm-mm.
it's not that at all. It's really very, very different. Anyway, so got a couple of comments here from some people with a few things. Gareth, are you going gray? Am I? I don't think so. I don't see any gray hairs. I'll let you know if I do.
Jeez, I've
My
had gray hair
grandpa,
since my 20s.
yeah, and it's not the worst thing actually. It's a sign of some wisdom. So when I do get them, I think I'll welcome them with open arms. My grandpa thought he had a stroke, but he just put his uncle's glasses on instead of his. Oh man. Well,
Oh man.
listen, I do have to say, this show, as much as I love it, and I have started to love it again, um, it's just not this early morning thing is not going to work forever. So there's going to be a point at some time in the not too distant future we're going to have to change things up, or not do the show so many times a week or something. It's not going to work like this forever. So
I
we've
I
got to be aware of
I
this.
I am gonna say this morning was a little bit tough. And
Oh
I've only been doing this for a couple of years. You've been doing this for many, many years. This
no.
morning, though, I felt like the alarm came a little earlier than usual, but I did go to bed a little later than usual.
Yeah. No, that's a definite feeling, and you're so tempted to hit that snooze button in the winter. You can.
Does it happen to you that when you then go on holiday, you still wake up at the crack of dawn?
Even on weekends. So what I do now is I've accepted it. There was a point in my life I used to get angry about the fact that I would wake up early on days where I didn't have to wake up early. But now I accept it. So what I do is I wake up, but then I say to myself, it's okay, you can go back to sleep. And then I do that. So Saturdays, if I don't have to be up super early, that's what I'll do. Take some magic mushrooms, says Gavin. Psilocybin is the key. Yeah. Hey, maybe I'll give it a try. What the hell? So let's do it. What will we do without a Gareth Cliff show? You've been part of my routine for like 15 years. Well, it's not happening now, Ricky. Calm your tits. It's I didn't say, Jesus. Cliff Centralist says, stop moaning, Gareth. You're a machine. Serve your people or I'll replace you with AI. Well, funny. I read such an interesting article yesterday about AI, about how it's not as dangerous or as scary as we think it is. That AI is essentially a mathematical program, and we do this to everything, human beings. We anthropomorphize everything, right? We take every single thing in our worlds, and we start to attribute to it human feelings and human conditions and human associations, and it's nonsense. I'm going to. I'll find the article and share it with you because I need to give credit to the author, but it's really, really good and makes a lot of sense.
Yesterday, I was at a luncheon, a fundraising luncheon for.
Can I just stop you quickly? Is a luncheon smarter than a lunch, or is it the same thing?
Is it who's smarter than a lunch?
Yeah, is a luncheon smarter than a lunch? Because when people say I was at a luncheon, it makes it sound like terrifically smart, as opposed to like I was at lunch.
No, absolutely. Everybody was dressed up quite fabulously. There was a fashion show. It was all sorts of things. But this is the thing. We were at that hotel here in Sandton that actually has a robot that checks you in and then walks you to your room. And all of that. I have a picture with the robot. And I remember when I read about it because they brought it in, I think during COVID. So at the front desk, it's all kind of self-check-in, no people there. I think they have 3 of these robots at reception, and then it takes you to your room, shows you to your room, all of that stuff. That's quite cool. Quite cool. It's not an android that's as sophisticated as the Star Wars kind of androids, right? But it is kind of in a mini humanish form. It rolls around and all of that stuff. Very cool.
Does it look like Wall-E from the movie?
A little bit like Wall-E. It's kind of, got a face and but it doesn't. I mean, when we get those like Star Wars sophisticated things, I can't wait.
I can't wait either. I mean, I think that they will. Again, there are people who are terrified. And yesterday we spoke about this new Apple Vision Pro. Have you seen it? The goggles, the big. Yeah. Mash told me about it. So I was obviously obsessed afterwards when I looked at it. They'll cost you in this country close to 90,000 Rand, 90,000 Rand.
3,500 Rand.
You do not need them. Do not let anyone convince you need them. There is absolutely no reason why ordinary people like us ever need to have more screens in our lives. We've got enough screens. Right now in front of me, I have 4. Okay, I have 4 screens in front of me right now. I'm not even.
I only have 3. My God.
I'm not even in the studio, and I have 4 screens. So you don't need any more. What you need is more reality, not more augmented or virtual reality. Let's be clear about that, because I think half the problem with humanity at the moment, the reason so many people are depressed, so many people are anxious, so many people are unhappy with their lives, feeling like they're not doing anything, like they're not going anywhere, like it's all very pointless. And that is a reality. Let's be absolutely clear about the fact that human beings are deeply, deeply unhappy right now. The majority of people do not know how to make themselves happy. And what drives me crazy is that they want to fix this by having more non-reality in their existence. They want to bring more screens in. They want to live an even more inauthentic life. How about you just go outside if you're so unhappy? It'll fill you up.
Yes.
Spend time with your family, with your friends. You want to have a happy life? There was this brilliant thing I saw on Instagram yesterday that someone sent me. And I'm clearly like paying attention again to stuff like this, because for a while I was so out of interest for Instagram. I was like, okay, enough of the booty girls, enough of the
BBLs.
Oh my God. And the dudes telling you how you can be physically primed and you should be fighting fit all the time. And this is what you should eat. And this is where you should steam. And this is where you should cold shower and all this shit. So I got back into it, and I think the algorithm has realized I was pissed off because it's serving me different stuff.
AI.
This brilliant video. Someone said this is the longest study ever conducted on humanity, right? They've taken, it was 700 men over a period of some 80 years that they've been doing this experiment. And these guys have to check in daily. And it's a longitudinal study that they've conducted on 700 American men to try and figure out what makes life happy and healthy. What makes people live a long, happy, prosperous, contented life. And guess what?
Have studied the Americans.
Well, that's probably about right. But guess what they found in this study? And it's ongoing, so it's not as if it's conclusive yet. But certainly up to now, what do you think they found that make people? What do you think makes people happiest?
I'm quite certain companionship is up there with most of them.
That's a big part of it. More generally, relationships are the single biggest factor. So if you have meaningful, deep, interesting, caring relationships with children in your family, with your parents, with your brothers and sisters, more generally with your friends, with your acquaintances, with your work colleagues. If you have meaningful relationships in your life, you will live longer and happier than anyone else. Doesn't matter if you, listen to this, this is fantastic. Doesn't matter if you eat badly, drink, smoke, take drugs, if you exercise, all of that stuff helps, right? It all helps. And we've been down this road a million times. You talk to all the experts on the show. That stuff all helps, because you're not going, you still require sustenance and exercise and a healthy lifestyle. All of that's very important. But by no means does it even come close to touching on the value of a relationship.
Wow.
So every friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, family member, loving, caring partnership, whatever it might be that you have, that is what will keep you alive longer. That's what will make your life feel meaningful, and not some VR headset that costs 90,000 Rand that you think is going to cure your problems or take you into a world where you'll finally feel at peace and at home. No, you're just doing it wrong in this world.
Gareth, I think I need to leave the studio and come back, and I keep like a lag on the sound on my side.
All right, Pums, go out and come back.
Don't
worry, I was talking so much shit anyway that it doesn't matter. Pumi will come back and she will have missed nothing. So yeah, I got a couple of very interesting comments yesterday also. G, what do you think about Shaka Zulu coming out on the 18th of this month? Are you going to watch? I think I have to, right? I'm such a fan of Shaka Zulu. And by the way, an interesting thing I discussed with John, what was his name? Not John Bland, John, anyway, he's a historian. He told me that the whole Shaka thing has become very political between the ANC and the IFP. Shaka is still very much the IFP hero. But it turns out that the ANC have, unsurprisingly maybe, become much more interested in the story of Dingaan, Shaka's half brother, who supposedly assassinated him and took over the kingdom when, Shaka had reached a point where he was doing more damage than good. And it's interesting to me that was the takeaway from him, and I'd be curious to see how they reinterpret the story of Shaka now. You've seen that there's this new show coming on. They've been advertising it on the highways, and obviously they're spending a lot of money on this. I'm not sure who the producers are. Do you know anything about it?
They did spend a hang of a lot of money on it. I think it's not Showmax, but one of the DSTV channels.
Cool.
And Bomb Productions was
Very nice.
Behind
Are
it.
they? Okay, well, so Pums, I have two questions about this because I do want to watch it, and I probably will. And you don't need to persuade me, anybody in the audience.
And then, of course, before you ask a question, and then, of course, because it's such a big thing everywhere, the Shaka Ilembe is what they're calling it. And so Netflix is showing the old Shaka Zulu with Henry Cele.
Oh, I loved that show as a kid. I've spoken about it before, so I loved that. But obviously, there's going to have to be some historical accuracy for me to buy into this. And I don't want any politics because, the politics of the early 1800s, very, very different to the politics with which we grapple today. And I'm very concerned, as I always am when I read a book, when I see a documentary being made, is that people tend to project, just like I was saying, we project our bullshit onto AI. People project their own modern day bullshit onto people from the past. They expect them to be woke. They expect them to be into LGBT rights. It's Pride Month in America, and this is a big thing. So they're calling Abraham Lincoln gay, by the way. I saw this in the news yesterday. They're saying,
wow.
One of the stupid channels in America that obviously has, people who've never read a book running it. They've decided that Abraham Lincoln had 4 relationships with men during his life. This makes him like a gay icon suddenly, because they're so desperate to find people in history who can break the mold and that they can celebrate in Pride Month. It's like when they cast Cleopatra as being a black African woman and everybody got all furious about that. Sorry, guys, but history, as much as you want history to conform to what your ideas are of the modern era, it's not going to. And Shaka Zulu does not give a shit about how liberal white people in the 21st century feel. And Shaka Zulu is not going to change to suit the needs of African Americans or Venezuelans or people who are pushing a certain narrative in South Africa right now. It's just not going to change. There is certain historical fact which is inescapable and which I would love to see represented in the screen, not ignored.
I can't wait to see it. But so you have become more interested in Dingaan. But for many years, I have been
No. Sorry, because you came in halfway. It's the ANC who have made Dingaan more of a focal point than Shaka. That was according to an article book that I read not so long ago, interviewed the author. He said it's become very political these days. IFP people are still very much into the Shaka story, and they believe, in the Zulu Empire and all of that stuff, the glory days, and how he was a great warrior and all of, because there are interpretations. But the ANC has taken more of a stand on the Dingaan side of things. Interesting. I don't know whether it's true or not. He's an academic. He's done some research. I'm willing to believe him. That's where it came from. It wasn't me. I still love Shaka.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, I am very, very interested in his aunt, Umkabai. Because she was actually quite pivotal to the assassination of Shaka eventually, and getting the boys riled up as he was becoming more and more of a despot after the passing of his mother.
Nandi, another very powerful woman.
So I'm also, because my dad tells me all sorts of fascinating stories about Zulu history, as you know.
Yes.
And one of those stories is about when, so Mkabai never married. And when a delegation came to ask for her hand in marriage, she looked around and said, you know what? The hills of KwaZulu are more beautiful than any man I'll ever meet. And I'm going to stay here. Thanks, but no thanks.
That's amazing. It's almost a parallel to Elizabeth I, who they were trying to marry
Absolutely.
all the time, and she said, "No, no, I'm married to England."
Mm.
So it's a very
So,
similar kind of. There are these, and maybe that's the Virgin Queen idea, which has also been many cultures have taken the Virgin Queen idea, including Christian Catholicism. You can say the Virgin Queen is a symbol of a certain kind of female purity, and
and virtue.
she does sound like I hope she's in the series because she didn't feature very much in the original Henry Tele Shaka Zulu. Because they,
Mm.
again, like people who make these shows are going to pick and choose. They can't put everything in, and sometimes the
Mm.
historical record is scant, and you have to make a lot of stuff up. So there's a certain amount. Don't get me wrong. There's a certain amount of poetic license and artistic license that even I would be okay. Well, that's fine. That's an interpretation. But my worry is that they're going to try and make Shaka this bland pacifist.
Oh no,
Or
he can't. But he can never be. That
well,
it's
you'd be
like,
surprised. There are people who are trying to say that this idea of the noble savage. It's been an idea it's been an idea for a long time, and they're still doing it in North America when it comes to the American Indians. They're trying to portray them as being these really peaceful, loving people who never had a fight with each other, who never ever engaged in anything violent until the white man came along. Of course, it's nonsense. They were massacring each other, scalping each other, taking each other into slavery the whole time in North America before that happened. And you can't bullshit by going back and trying to sanitize history. So they're the people who'll do that. And then there are the other people who will say he was a disgusting warlord imperialist who was intent on murdering everyone else in South Africa that he didn't like. And he was just bad, bad, bad to the bone, did nothing good. Because those are the two interpretations on Shaka. Both, of course, are wrong.
sure.
Anyway, I think it's great. George Meany even says, I loved the old Shaka Zulu. It was brilliant. I have to watch the new one. Yeah, I'm going to watch it. So there's the short answer. Sorry, I went off into a whole tangent, but
Look,
I love Zulu.
I do think that with all the advertising that they've done, I mean, they have been kind of seeding this since a year ago when they started, well, more than a year ago when they started shooting, kind of putting out snippets of what it looks like, what the accuracy of costume and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then a year ago they had a big kind of showcase at the Delicious Festival as one of the pieces. That's where their big launch was. And then they've got posters everywhere. So I do think that this is probably going to have a little spike, no matter how bad the rand is doing and how stretched we all are after 10 consecutive increases in the interest rate. People will still pay for entertainment, and I think that they are going to see a spike of subscriptions because of this particular drama.
Yeah. There are two things I want you to address. First of all, obviously, Carl being very serious. Did you know that Shaka Zulu was actually Sesotho? It was just an unfortunate coincidence. His surname was Zulu. It caused him great anguish, and that's why he was so aggressive. Very serious question. But here's one from Snipes, who says there is already a controversy about the lead actor being Sotho, Tswana. I think that's the younger character. Well,
I don't know if it's a controversy, but it's, and it'll be interesting. So here's the thing. Because I think a lot of South Africans, particularly Zulu-speaking South Africans, would have seen the Henry Cele version of Shaka Zulu, which we spoke about earlier. That's on Netflix again this kind of season, which was a Zulu drama. So everybody had to speak the language, right? Because remember, in the bad old days, we actually had like TV that was targeted at people in their home languages.
Yeah.
And I think this one is going to be in English. So it doesn't matter that the lead actor in the one of the young, I don't think it's the younger one. I think it's kind of like the main one is a Sesotho actor. Doesn't matter if it's in English. And it's okay if he's a Sesotho actor, if it's in Zulu, if he speaks the language.
Well, you know where this comes from, right? I mean, there are these people who in Hollywood have lately decided that unless you are actually in a wheelchair and unable to walk, you can't play someone in a wheelchair who's unable to walk. Unless you are gay, you can't play a gay person in a movie. That's what Hollywood has been churning out recently, and it's such nonsense. I mean, the whole point of acting is you pretend. So I agree with you, Pumi. Since there's not going to be any Zulu, so he's not going to be faulted on his pronunciation. Then, and by the way, how do we know that Zulu 150, 170 years ago was the same kind of sounds as we have now? We know English didn't sound the same 200 years ago. So why would Zulu? You know?
Well, as a Zulu speaking person, I will tell you that depending on where you are in KZN, people speak different types of Zulu.
Correct. So anyway, it's all.
And when you're in Soweto, they speak a whole other thing, kind of like Americans and English.
Exactly. You should watch The History of Swear Words with Nick Cage. Apparently,
oh my goodness, I need its name.
Wow.
Is that the name of this show?
I think so. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but
I'm going to look for it.
And a lot of people talking about this Succession. Yeah, I watched up to season 3.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I haven't watched season 4 of Succession either. You haven't watched any?
I haven't watched the new season, so we're not talking about it. I want
neither.
No spoilers. I will watch it. I'm gonna be on a plane for a very, very long time tonight and next week. So I will download it and I will watch it on the plane.
Excellent, because I'm going to be doing the same. I'm going to be doing this last season of Succession soon. Don't worry, I'll be on it. Then we can talk about it together, Pumi. That's what we want. It's like these couples. You get these couples where the husband and wife, they have to watch things together, because if one of them watches it without the other one, they get upset.
It's a new kind of bonding ritual.
Yeah, exactly. Dusty Nose says, I'm rewatching the old Shaka Zulu. If they cover the boobies in the new one, I'm out. Yeah. I agree. Right. Absolutely. Ask Pumi, is it true that the reeds used for those Zulu rondos are extinct?
Oh, I don't know this. I have never heard it. I will ask about it, but I will tell you that you don't see a lot of those anymore, even when you're driving around KwaZulu. As you know, I do a lot of KZN expeditions, but you don't see a lot of those. You don't see a lot of those anymore. And because they're quite like people who have thatched anything in their homes, like a boma or whatever, that thatch is high maintenance. You have to comb it once a year. You have to fill it, refill it. So I haven't seen new ones of those being built in a very, very long time. You hardly see them. So I don't know if it's because the reeds are extinct.
I don't know anything about this. I can't add any value here, I'm afraid. JRU.
I will find out.
Great Name says, a series of interest to Gareth might be FDR on the History Channel. 3-part miniseries chronicles the life of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States. I will watch that at some point too. I
just watched something of that nature about Franklin Delano.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, very fascinating guy. And why and how he became president. It's amazing.
I've got to tell you, just to go back to it, because George also says he's busy watching Succession now. First season becomes boring from season 2. I found season 1 awesome. Season 2 and 3, I got a little bit disappointed. I thought they were just stringing it out too long. Apparently 4 is fantastic. That's why I'm good. Okay, so let's move on. Carl DeSantos says, Garrett, is it possible to stop Pumi telling us how useless the DA is at telling their story and just accept the last swathes of the electorate have shit for brains? Well,
bullshit. I call bullshit.
But I do think that large swathes of humanity have shit for brains, and that's true all over the world. I mean, there some people, like, let's take a fairly mainstream opinion in America of Vladimir Putin as an evil tyrant dictator. Then why is he so popular in Russia? Russians love him, you know? Why
And
is
look, but he is losing his popularity very fast.
well, listen, when you tend to send the young men of your country to war, you tend to piss off a lot of people, and rightly so. So I think, there's always a discussion around this. You get the government you deserve. Something that came up with Justice Malala the other day too. And by the way, I have to say it was great to see Justice again. And it's always nice to talk to him. His book is absolutely fantastic. And everyone who's read it has had the same feedback about the murder of Chris Hani, how close we came to civil war. It's a great, great book. I can't recommend it enough. But I'm really excited that the Burning Platform has moved in a completely different direction. And we have to keep evolving these things. And I said this to you, Pumi, the other day. I feel like the Burning Platform has more teeth now than it ever had. We go straight for the jugular in a way that I don't think we were 8 years ago. And things evolve, things change. So as much as it's good to have justice there to compare where we are now as to where we were in the beginning, I feel like the Burning Platform is better than ever. And by the way, that's coming up in just a short while. So stick around for Pumi and I on the Burning Platform a little bit later.
I do have to say, though, the one thing about the comment is that most of the electorate have shit for brains is a small quote by a former U.S. Secretary of Defense who was in charge when they were in Vietnam, or when they were withdrawing in Vietnam. And his view, and I think this is possibly something that we all need to consider, is that he says their central failure in Vietnam was failing to see the enemy, to see themselves, America, in the eyes of their enemy. And I think this is what a lot of politicians get wrong, including the DA, including that statement, is failing to see the other side and how they see things. Gareth, you and I we've had many years of Rena's wisdom in our lives. And she always talks about respect and the fact that it's two words, re and spect. So look, spect, and re again, look again. I think we have to respect each other and kind of look in our view and look in the view of the other person. And then it makes it easier for us to kind of understand. We may not agree, but we can understand.
Well, I think it's really important to try and understand what people's motivation is too. Why people would vote a certain way tells you a lot about them. And we can only guess at this point if someone is voting ANC after 30 years and it's not working for them. We've got to try and guess at what they're thinking. So for some people, it means whoever still votes ANC has shit for brains. For other people, it means we have more work to do. We have more to figure out. We have more questions to ask. For some people, South Africa still does turn on a lot of race stuff, hey? And if you really want to get a lot of the country fired up, you just bring race into something and it immediately gets fired up. And the politicians know this. So they play on it.
One of the last things I saw on social media before I went to bed last night was Phumzile van Dam, formerly of the DA, going apeshit about some DA post, about a DA post. And I looked at it and I wondered to myself, that this is a person who was on the inside. And now, being on the outside, these are the views that she's projecting. But for a very long time, when she was on the inside, these are not the views she was projecting.
Well, people are also self-serving. And when they fall from their perch, as she has, then they have no reason to be loyal anymore. And suddenly look at Herman Mashaba. Look how obsessed Herman Mashaba is with not working with the DA. Same thing. Because he was hurt and wounded by his interactions with the DA. He's still reeling. And we can tell. By the way, will you be buying his book? Because he says it's still going to be available.
Okay. I was
he was on
Clement's show. He was on Clement Manyatela's show,
Mm.
talking about how he feels and how he would spend that 12.5 all over again, which made me wonder. So it's not alone, which is the first statement that came out, was that it was alone.
Wow. Okay. Pumzile, the biggest victim of everything, says JP. Yeah, that's what it feels like to me when I read her stuff. And God forbid I should have to read her stuff, but she does occasionally pitch up in the timeline. And she's totally irrelevant now. I don't know why anyone's bothering to listen to her. She does not like, she occupies any position of prominence. She hasn't joined any other parties, as far as I know, but she's sitting on the outside. She's made her life about being the person who was scorned by the, she's like the scorned woman in a marriage and then spends the rest of her time complaining about her ex, you know? That's what it is. Anyway, any chance we could do a burning platform debate for the elections? I think that would be such a good idea.
That would be amazing.
Now that we've got a venue where we can do it, I think that's an awesome idea, Snipes. So yes, we're going to put that on the agenda. Sanele says, I'm not buying Herman's book. I'm not contributing to the most idiotic funding in recent history. Yeah, look, I don't want to start politics before we have done the burning platform this morning. Otherwise, it's a lot of politics to deal with in one morning. But don't worry, there'll be more. I have noticed such an increase in like unsolicited work emails. People who are asking for work, not real people, but like companies that are spamming you with, did you reply to my previous mail? Do you have any thoughts on my previous mail? Meanwhile, I've never heard from this person before, and their phone number is always in like another country. Would you exploring? So it's always these general things. Like I got this morning. Did you have any thoughts on my previous emails? Of course, it says, hi, Gareth, but you can tell that it's generated by a machine. According to my research, there could be opportunities for custom software to support your business growth. Would you be interested in exploring these opportunities? And then regards the person's name. And I just know it's bullshit. Right? And this is about the fourth time I've received an email from this company. But it's clearly like they're just fishing for business and it's some automated response or whatever it is.
Well, we do have an economy that's growing at 0.00001%.
Yeah,
which means that the sales cycles have become longer, and everybody has to make different ways, has to find different ways of soliciting business and trying to get business and getting your attention. It's a nightmare, particularly in the services industry.
Oh my God, how true is that? All right, do you want to do some headlines quickly?
Oh yes, headlines.
All right. First of all, this is not a headline, but it's something that Dori, the producer, thought that you might be able to help us with, Pums. We often get listener emails, and some of them we save for a Thursday for you. Some of them we put on a Tuesday, Monday, whatever. So here's your one for this morning, all right? Hi, G and team. I've run out of options and I need some help. It's from Vince. Vince says, please could you ask the audience what to do if the post office has delivered your expensive package to the wrong person? They've apparently signed for it, and I have no idea who this person is. Like, what the fuck? Is there any way to get this back, Pumi? Is there any way that do you know? Does anyone who's listening to us this morning know? What can you do when an expensive overseas package has been delivered to the wrong person by the post office?
Wait a minute. The post office delivered something? That is news. That is, what are you talking about?
Oh, come on. This person was earnestly hoping for an answer here, and we're gonna mock them by talking about how shit the post office.
This is not mockery. This is an important piece of information, because it means, and that should make it much easier to track down, right? If there is this one post office somewhere in South Africa that's actually doing the work, they will have a signature somewhere. It's not like before where you would have to track it down through Witbank or something.
Huh. I wonder. I have honestly got no idea, and I've still got packages that I've never received 5-6 years later that I paid for.
I know. I bought glasses in the States, and a friend of mine sent them. She doesn't know any better. She's American. So she sent them on the post. They were delivered to her house when she was coming down to South Africa, and they arrived the day after she left. So when she got back home, she thought, oh, I'll just send it in the post.
Yeah. Well, Carl DeSantis says the South African post office, buy another one and cut your losses. So obviously people not very excited about the post office. I mean, isn't the post office about to be liquidated again, or they've run out of money again, or there's some big shit going on there. Despite the fact that they had, they kept on telling us they were getting things right, it was all going well. Obviously another disaster. Because why? Because everything government touches turns to shit. And if you haven't realized that yet, you're not paying attention.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think I agree. You just cut your loss.
I'm sorry, Vince. We were no help to you this morning at all, but we did get your email and we've tried to address it and we were useless. So we're as bad as the post office. All right. Busisiwe Mkhwebane plans to release a recording of alleged extortion. This is what she says. I don't know whether to believe her or not. Of course, she's hardly covered herself in glory when it comes to things like the truth. But she says she's going to release to the public a recording on the alleged extortion of her by the late Tina Jumat-Peterson. So she's waited until Tina Jumat-Peterson's dead. Mkhwebane has accused her of trying to inquiry into her fitness to hold office with a bribe.
So they have released pieces of stuff. So prior to the death of Tina Jumat-Peterson, there was a WhatsApp, some WhatsApps or screenshots of WhatsApps that were released, which are apparently a conversation between Mkhwebane's husband, Tina Jumat-Peterson, Janji, the chairperson of the committee that is hearing the 197 or something like that, and Pema Jodina is the third person in this conspiracy.
Yeah, that's right.
My question is, why are they releasing it in like snippets, like it's series? Just release everything. Release everything. If all of these things exist, if all of this information exists, why are you slow feeding it into the public in season 1 of something and and leaving us on a cliffhanger?
It also shows you that the ANC is really just one big angry WhatsApp group. Really. I mean, it's like people extorting each other, threatening to release this, threatening to release that, because they all, to a person, have dirty fingers and dirty hands and hands in the till. All of them. And my assumption is that until someone is brave enough and someone is clean enough to release everything, as you say, Pumi, I'm just going to take it as a given that everyone is a crook. So if there are people in the ANC, the supposedly good people that everyone talks about, if there are some of those good people in the ANC, I would like to just say to them, once and for all, release everything. If you're a good person, you have nothing to fear by releasing everything.
We're still waiting for Jacob Zuma's tell-all book.
Now, where's the small Anyana skeletons that we were told about? By Batabile Dlamini all those years ago. Remember when she said, the small Anyana skeletons? Well, where are they? I mean, we're still waiting. So bring it on, baby. All right. So I don't even want to go into more of that story. It just infuriates me. South Africa and the UAE have got a tag team going in an attempt to extradite the Guptas. But I believe the Guptas are not even in the UAE anymore. Haven't they moved? They've gone somewhere else. All right, well, let's listen to this. So in a new effort to extradite Rajesh and Atul Gupta, the South African and United Arab Emirates governments have joined a task team. I love these task teams and these meetings about a task team and these preparatory meetings and commissions of inquiry into a task team, into a preparatory. Please, these are politicians just getting together, wasting time.
Busy being busy.
After meeting with the UAE's Minister of Justice on Monday, the two states have ironed out issues following South Africa's failed extradition request in April. It was all the way back in April. Gupta brothers wanted in South Africa in connection with a wide range of charges, including fraud, corruption, money laundering, etc. In a statement on Wednesday, Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola said he'd met with UAE minister and raised concerns about the status of the Gupta's extradition. According to the statement, the objective of the meeting was to enhance partnership and cooperation with the UAE for mutual legal assistance in extradition matters. Again, talking about talking. Why can't we do a deal? Why don't we do a deal and say, all right, you know what? Unless you guys are going to give us some of this Gupta information, and you're not going to extradite the Guptas for us, we're just going to suspend trade relations or something like that. How about have some consequence? How about bring some balls to the discussion? But of course they can't, because we're not in a negotiating position. And the UAE doesn't give a shit what we say. They're not interested in Ronald Lamola, are they? I'm not even interested in Ronald Lamola, and he's supposedly my minister. So don't hold your breath is the basic. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Do not hold your breath on the Guptas being extradited. I love these stories. This is from Business Insider. It says a teenage girl found her mom's debit card and spent $64,000 on mobile games, wiping out her family's life savings. She's a teenage girl in China.
What?
In China. This is not in America. This is in China. 13-year-old girl spent $64,000 of her parents' money on mobile games this year, wiping out their savings account without their knowledge. Gong Yi Wang learned about the spending spree in late May after receiving a call from a teacher at her daughter's boarding school who worried that the child was addicted to pay-to-play games. When Gong checked out her bank account, she realized it was left with a bank balance of only 7 cents. She later discovered that from January to May, that's now, right? Just now, January to May. The daughter had spent $16,800 buying game accounts and almost $30,000 on in-game purchases. The girl also transferred money to at least 10 classmates who wanted to buy game products for themselves, bringing the total cost of the months-long binge to $64,000.
Whoa.
I never thought a 13-year-old girl could do this. I'm in a daze. My head feels like it's going to explode, said the mother. Weeping as she spoke, Gong's daughter told the news that she linked her mother's debit account to her phone, but didn't know where the money came from or how much she was spending. She said that she remembered her mother telling her the account's password from a previous occasion when she asked to buy something else. She said her school friends noticed her newfound spending power and pestered her for money. If I didn't send it to them, they would bother me all day. If I told the teacher, I was afraid to tell my parents, and that my parents would get angry. You know, this is why teenagers should not be given any decision-making powers whatsoever. None.
No, although, so this is why the teenagers should be given a finite amount of money of their own to control and do with as they please. So if this young person did not have her credit card, her mother's credit card linked to her phone so she can do whatever, like get an Uber or whatever, right? But if she had her own damn card with her own allowance, then they can control it. Just, you know. And these things, these in-app purchases are dangerous, hey? They are just, ask Kanego about the skins on whatever that silly game is that everyone plays.
I think these parents obviously made a terrible mistake because they kept their daughter alive. Most Chinese families know that you must kill your daughter and keep your son, and this is where the problem started.
You must what? What?
You know, teenage Chinese girls are obviously a terrible problem because most Chinese families know you keep the boy. You don't keep the girl. If you can only have one child, as per Mao's original regulations. Come on, communism works, people. All right, but these in-game purchases, I don't understand how it works. I've never been so involved in a game that I needed to buy stuff while I'm in the game. I presume, according to this story anyway, these were mobile games. So they were all things she was playing on her phone. to spend $64,000. I mean, I just want to quickly do a calculation to see what that would be in rands, because $64,000 is a lot of money. It sounds like a lot, but when you suddenly multiply it,
a lifetime worth of.
It's 1.23 million rand. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Over 1.2 million rand on in-game purchases. This poor family. They should just give this child up for adoption right now.
They should sell her.
If you sell her to a slave factory, like a sweatshop somewhere in China, they're in China already. Sell it to a sweatshop, you might be able to recoup, I don't know, like 50,000 of the 1.2 million. I don't know. What do you get for a slave? I'm not sure, but it's definitely not worth keeping her. I think she's proven that she's no good. She's no good. Get rid of her. Try again. Make a new child, or adopt someone else's and give this one up for for slavery. Anyway, we go. Oh, not funny, Gareth, says Ancient Ether. Ooh, not funny. Well, then you know what, Ancient Ether. Then maybe today's the day where you don't listen anymore. Who knows? Suddenly, I'm being told what's funny and what isn't by someone in the comments section. Ooh, that's going to change my opinion. Suddenly, wait, you mean you didn't laugh at that? So now I have to completely reform my sense of humor to make it to your liking. Oh, I feel like you've been listening to the wrong show the whole time. They must sell her, says Tabo. Yeah, I agree, dude. How did the parents not know? That's a good point. says, how did the parents not know?
She's at boarding school.
Yeah, but surely there are notifications. I mean, if I spend more than $50 on my phone, it tells me. Right? Anyway.
This story is making me sick.
Yeah, let's move on. Here's something. This is something pretty wild. A crocodile was found to have made herself pregnant. It's like an immaculate conception.
What?
Crocodile eyes. Yeah. Listen to this, Pumi. A crocodile in Costa Rica has produced a fetus that was 99.9% genetically identical to herself. She produced a clone. The phenomenon is so-called virgin birth, has been found in species of birds, fish, and other reptiles, but never before in crocodiles. Scientists say that the trait may be inherited from an evolutionary ancestor, so dinosaurs might have been capable of self-reproduction. Research has been published in the Royal Society and Biology Letters. Egg was laid by an 18-year-old female American crocodile in Park Reptiliana in January of 2018. The fetus inside was fully formed, but stillborn, and so did not hatch. The crocodile who laid the egg was obtained when she was 2 years old and was kept apart from the other crocodiles for their entire life. Because of this, the park's scientific team contacted Belfast-born Dr. Warren Booth, who's now working at Virginia Tech in the US. He's been studying virgin birth.
Tech.
I know. So that's why I stopped there. I was like, what? He's been studying virgin birth at Virginia Tech, known as parthenogenesis, for 11 years. That's, of course, how Mary is supposed to have given birth to Jesus, Told the BBC that he wasn't surprised by the discovery. You're not surprised? Why is it news then? He says we see it in sharks, birds, snakes, and lizards, remarkably common and widespread. He speculated the reason. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know this, and maybe he's right. It is widespread. Certainly, before you jump to conclusions.
Well, he's been studying it for 11 years.
Now, he's way more familiar with this stuff than the rest of us are.
Because otherwise he's been bullshitting everybody for 11 years.
Right. So thank you. He's contradicting himself. He speculated the reason that it has not been seen in crocodiles is because people have not been looking for examples of this. That's like these people who say, oh, no, but the trans community has been in human history for all time. We've just never looked for them. No, that's not it.
So I'm so glad you said that, because one of the first things that popped into my mind when you started reading the story is how in the hell they decided to check this. How they decided, this we better check this one. But wow.
Well,
so she was all by herself in the enclosure. and she still laid an egg.
Correct. And then the egg was stillborn, so it wasn't a viable baby crocodile. But the fact is, it had exactly the same genetic makeup as the mother, to the point of being 99.9% identical to it in DNA, which is interesting. Anyway, he said there was a big increase in reports of parthenogenesis when people started keeping pet snakes, but your average reptile keeper doesn't keep a crocodile. Yeah. One theory is that it happens in species capable of parthenogenesis when numbers dwindle and they're on the verge of extinction. Dr. Booth told BBC News that may have happened to some species of dinosaurs when their numbers dwindled due to environmental changes. What, like a meteor? The fact that the mechanism of parthenogenesis is the same in so many different species suggests that it is a very ancient trait that has been inherited throughout the ages. So it supports the idea that dinosaurs might have reproduced in this way too. Wow.
Look at that.
Go. Right.
What's the crocodile's name?
They don't go into that, but I'm assuming if it's at Virginia Tech and they're studying virgin parthenogenesis, maybe the crocodile's name is Virginia. Assuming there's so much coincidence here, right? Anyway,
it would be an apt name.
Yeah, there's one more thing I want you to know about. Oh, we don't have time. It's 7:00. We'll see if we can squeeze it in during the Burning Platform. We've got a lot to get to today, and plenty to talk about too. We want to hear all about
fainting mayors.
Oh yes, fainting mayors. We've also got to talk about the fight that our guest Leeto had with a Cliff Central listener on Twitter, and we'll talk about that too. So Leeto Nthoba is going to be joining us again. We haven't seen Leeto in a little while. Be good to check in with him. And we've got your comments, your questions. You can always get hold of us on cliffcentral.com, on the YouTubes. We're taking your calls.
V-Ross thinks the crocodile's name was Mary. That's funny.
We'll leave it at that for this hour. We'll be back in a moment or two. Don't go anywhere. cliffcentral.com, Thursday morning. Good morning, everybody.
Every time you listen to that 80s show, Tom Cruise lives another 10 years. Every Friday on cliffcentral.com, Paolo and Dory review movies, reminisce about old songs, remember childhood places that are now car parks, and say some outrageously rude things about Patrick Swayze's brother. That 80s show, new episode every Friday, live or as a podcast on cliffcentral.com.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
The sales numbers for new energy vehicles just came out recently, and like you had predicted a while back, it is still growing. And what, like you said, hybrid vehicles seem to be the one that's pushing that lever. Do you think that's going to change anytime soon? Do you think that's just kind of, the way South Africa is right now?
we've been saying probably for about since COVID actually, we've been 2.5 years, maybe a bit more. We've been saying that hybrid vehicles is the middle step to battery electric. Why is that? 2 reasons. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
That is it. It is time for us to get into the burning platform this morning. Dun, 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 dun. This is where we go into all the stories in the news this week and all the things that people are talking about. We try to make sense of it. Sometimes we make absolute nonsense of it. I'm not even going to try to hide the fact that Pumi and I have sat here some mornings looking at the news going, what? Are you insane? What are you smoking? Right? But this morning we're joined by our compatriot and regular attendee and partaker of the burning platform. He's none other than Leeto Nthoba. Good morning, Leeto. How are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm good, and yourself?
Yeah, listen, I know. You don't have to say it. The Free State's the coldest place on earth in winter. I know.
Absolutely.
You see, cutting your dreadlocks was not a good idea.
Not a good idea at all, okay? Please don't tell me. Let's just...
All right, so Leeto, let's just start off as we always do with you. I'm sorry, but we have to just do a check-in on small town South Africa because you've become the representative and spokesperson, and God knows no one else even bothers talking about these places anymore. So how are little Kroonstad and other towns in South Africa faring? Are we even worse? Was it possible? I thought we'd hit rock bottom. Have we got worse, or have things improved?
Definitely got worse. We are on day 10 without water.
Oh my God.
So because what they're trying to do is to try to avert the cholera crisis that's happening in Hammanskraal. Yeah, so they found cholera has also contaminated the water toward the Free State. So every water reservoir has been closed because they haven't been cleaning the water. So if you were drinking the water straight out of the tap, you were drinking everything that came straight out of whatever river the water comes from. So
God.
Now they're scared that if you drink out of the tap again, you're probably going to be drinking the cholera and die, and then that would cause a crisis. So they'd rather just switch off the water. They said the water would be back in a day and a half. It's day 10. So it's getting worse. No explanations. They don't even care to, even the opposition, nobody cares to say anything. Nobody cares to oppose that there's 10 days without water. Like yesterday, on my way to work, I passed by young people ready to burn tires and go crazy. So the riots are about to begin. Probably this morning, I'm going to be out there and seeing tires burning and university students not being able to write because it's their time to write exams. And most of the university students from our university don't actually come from Welcome. They come from elsewhere. So they're usually scared at these times and they sort of hide out in their rooms.
So, Leeto, where do we begin with this thing? I mean, I do think that water seems to now be the next area for the ANC to fuck up. They fucked up electricity properly. I had a substation out here in my area for 3 days and also didn't have any water. Well, I didn't have hot water. I mean, I mustn't complain. I had some water. I just didn't have hot water. You know, we're now comparing how miserable our existences are in the 21st century. But the reality is now they're fucking up the water as well. And people are starting to say, well, I don't know how much worse it can get. Do you think it is possible, particularly in small town South Africa, that there are still new depths for them to burrow to?
Yes, this is a new low. There's another low to get to. Because remember, this water that we're talking about, like the electricity you can generate. So you can build something to make something and then the lights go on, right? There could be a fix for that. But the water in and of itself is becoming a very, very scarce resource, right? All around the world, people are changing water legislation, even in America, right? In the Midwest, the people who are feeding from the river that flows towards Las Vegas, they're changing the laws. So the water is not, you're not just fucking up the water with the contamination, you're messing up the water as it pertains to how it gets to people and if it gets to people. So that's the next step that they're going to really mess up. Because remember, the tenderpreneurs are not beyond, while the water is off, the tenderpreneurs are not beyond going to where the reservoir is and messing up the pipes and messing up the way in which you get the water into the pipes and transmit it so that they can get a tender to eat. So remember, when there's so much money flowing in the wrong directions, there's no sort of bottom to the depravity of people. If I'm a tenderpreneur used to getting 10 million rand from the government for no reason, and suddenly I have an opportunity to break 2 machines and then get 20 million, why not?
All right. Well, that brings us to this discussion, which a lot of people have asked us to talk about this morning already, and I think it's a valid one to get into. This is from Business Tech. It says, draft regulations will determine access to water based on skin color, according to the ANC, and many farmers are saying that this will have a catastrophic impact on food security and employment in the agricultural sector. It's the warning from Agri-SA in response to the proposed water licensing regulations gazetted by the Department of Water and Sanitation. The prescribed minimum black South African shareholding requirements of 25%, 50%, and 75% required for a water license to succeed depends on the volume of water abstracted or stored in the area covered. So now the solution is to make water a race quota thing. Does this make any sense at all?
No, I think one of the things that we forget when we talk about legislation in South Africa is that
nobody
cares
what legislation is.
Yeah, but also that because we're so good at communicating, that it is easy to twist anything to meet a political end. So understand that we have water legislation in our country, and the water legislation that we have is from many, many years ago. So we spoke about the water project that we did in KZN. The area in which we did this has a lot of water in it. There's Umzinyati flows near there, and you don't have to dig far to get to be able to get a water pump, to get groundwater and to be able to get a water pump. But in that same area, there are many commercial farms which have much water to them. And that water is diverted from the river to those farms. And when we were traveling we actually traveled with the professor of desert studies from Ben Gurion University. And he was the first person that made me aware of the fact that there is plenty of water in this area. It is just that the way that this water is distributed is disproportionate. So people in the villages have no water, but in the adjacent farm, there's plenty of water, and the ways in which they use that water are outdated ways.
Are you saying that the solution is to have race-based water quota?
No, I don't. So I have not read the legislation. And so what I don't know is what it is that the legislation is trying to reconfigure and fix. Because the legislation has always had race quotas. The legislation has always had race quotas. Do you think the apartheid government did not have race quotas in their legislation? Of course they did.
I'm telling you what it says now. Do you think we must carry on having race quotas?
No, I am saying to you that we are reading a perspective that has a very particular slant to create the impression that.
Do you think we should have a race quota system on water?
I think that water should be equitable to everybody, because water is essential to everybody's life.
Yes.
You can't have some people have more access than others.
But if I may, Gareth, remember, this legislation doesn't just amend whatever legislation is there now. It amends the legislation for people who hold. Remember, when you have a water license, some people hold 200 and 300-year water licenses. So when legislation comes in, it also amends what your license says about your holding of the water. And so it's not just...
Two things, though. I mean, prior to 1998, it could have been around there. I'm not exactly sure. But water was actually owned by the landowner. In other words, the person who owned the land could drill a borehole. They didn't need any government authority. But since then, whenever it was, I think it's around 98, the ANC now made government the owner of all water. So government is technically the custodian of all water. It's like government's the custodian of our seas and various other things. Government's the custodian of our electricity. Look how well that's worked out. So number one, so if Pumi and you are correct that it's not equitable and water distribution isn't fair and equal, that may be true, but you're going to let the government decide who gets water, and this is how they're going to do it by making race quotas?
No, so let me show you. So with your example, right? Before 98, the person who held the property, who had the right to the water. So in Kroonstad, there are 3 farms that cut off an off branch of the Vaal River, right? Those 3 farms own the flow of the water and the distribution of the water to everyone around them. And so such legislation would go to try to speak to the distribution of the water. So when you take the water and you say the government now owns the water, you're saying the water just flows through your property and you don't particularly own it. What you do own is how much you can store of the water, and the government also regulate that. And so what they're doing now is that to say, because that distribution is seemingly still leaning to a certain racial direction, let's redistribute it in this way.
Okay. So we're going, here's chapter 5 of the legislation you're asking about. Consideration of a decision for water use license applications to promote equity and redressing past racial and gender discrimination. I don't know how gender plays into this, but that's always part of the ANC's narrative.
Women citrus farmers in the KZN have been experiencing that on a gender basis. The black women who are citrus farmers have had trouble getting water because of the white farmers around them, especially with the commercial farms.
So the solution is to carry on making racist legislation.
Well, it seems like that's all we are grasping to as South Africans, right? If everyone around you is grasping, so consider the black farmer, the black woman farmer with a citrus farm in the middle of white citrus farms in KZN. If this woman is not getting the access to the water that she deserves like everyone else, so how do you alleviate that? How do you equitably get the water to her? Because everyone else is not getting the water to her. Everyone else is sharing the water and excluding her. So having exclusions to people then leads to you trying to.
So guys, what you're saying is that even when something is blatantly wrong and based on race-based policies, as long as it makes everybody equally miserable, we must go with it.
What would be the best case scenario for you, Gareth? How do we address a situation where 3 commercial farmers who happen to be white have access to all the water and 1 commercial farmer who happens to be black does not? How do we address that?
I think this sounds like a made-up scenario.
It's not made up.
What are you talking about?
If you talk about like a farmer who has access to all the water, is that farmer pumping all the water out of the ground just to keep it away from that black citrus farmer next door?
Yes, the containers in which they store the water in then leaves the least amount of water for the black farmer.
And they're depleting all the groundwater. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Then I'm afraid you don't understand how water works and how groundwater is replenished. Pumi will tell you, she's involved in this. There is groundwater. There's a certain amount of groundwater, but you cannot use it all up. You guys are looking at this like the cake is only this big and you can only cut it into smaller and smaller pieces.
But when you are farming, that's different to when you are using it for household purposes. You need a certain amount of water to farm, especially something like
Gareth.
that.
But Gareth, you haven't given us what your view of how to address a historical.
Okay, I don't.
How do we address a historical problem?
You can redress historical problems. That's part of why we constantly get stuck in this world.
So how do we move forward?
It happened 3 generations ago. Here's what we have to do. We have to treat this thing sensibly, and we have to be rational and reasonable about it on a case-by-case basis. We cannot have people in the Department of Water and Sanitation who, by the way, are spreading cholera in every other part of South Africa because they're switching off the machines, they're turning off the reservoirs, they're not able to maintain the water infrastructure. You want to give those same people control of our water, our most precious resource, which we're all agreed.
Well, they already have control of it.
Okay, so in other words,
they already have control of it.
You two are saying, so long as there is an attempt at, and of course, I don't believe the ANC can actually ensure equity at all, but you two are saying, as long as it looks like they're going to try and ensure equity, that they'll try and make some kind of political gesture to that black citrus farming woman in KZN. As long as they look like they're doing the right thing, we'll go with that. And in process of doing that, we don't mind if they enact racist legislation.
Here's the great thing about legislation is there are 400 people in parliament, right, who are represented, and because we've got proportional representation, all those people represent their constituencies. And this is the reason we have proportional representation in our parliament. And this is the job that they need to be doing. They need to represent their constituents and fight for their constituents. Then the legislation will be amended.
But the ANC are saying, the ANC, and by the way, in KwaZulu-Natal, their majority is even higher than it is in the national parliament, right? So in KZN, the ANC is going to do whatever it wants. It's going to enact this legislation as per this ridiculous law where they're going to proportionally assign water to people. I don't know how that's going to work. And then, of course, it's going to be administered very badly. It's not going to be maintained, and no one gets water. And you guys are okay with that as long as it keeps a couple of greedy white farmers from getting what they need.
No, Gareth. So this is the alternative.
Grow our food, by the way.
No, here's the alternative. The alternative is you rescind all of the licenses and start the license process anew, afresh, and to equitably distribute the licensing of water throughout everyone's hands. And then that is going to lead to legal action because it's illegal to then take your license that you already have. So there are two routes to take here. The one route is clearly illegal. And the other route,
no one who's listening to the show would be acceptable of a converse form of legislation. No one in the world would say it's okay to discriminate against black people because of water. Not in 2023. And in the old days, that was acceptable. We had to fight to get it changed. We had to go.
But it's still happening. If it's still happening, how do you address it if it's still happening?
And the solution is a new kind of racism.
No, the solution, listen, the solution is one of two things, right? The one thing is going to lead to the government being the criminal outright. If they take the licenses and say, we're going to take the 100-year license that you have to store and distribute water throughout a certain surface area. If they take those, the farmers have a legal right to go to court, right, and challenge that. But the problem here is if you then legislate it, right, the farmers can still go to court, by the way, and challenge this legislation and say it's unfair, right, and then show how it's unfair, right? And so the counter argument is going to show the cases that the black people have been. Yeah.
Pumi actually is involved in providing water to villages in KwaZulu-Natal. She knows a lot about this. I'm not going to argue with her about how we get water to people. And I'm also not going to argue with you about a case-by-case basis or even a fictitious scenario where there's this poor black farmer who lives in the middle of these vicious, nasty white farmers who take all her water. I know for a fact in municipalities where all three of us live, we sometimes don't get water. We have a right to water. We have a right to equitable water and all this shit. But because of the kind of people who manage this stuff, there are days, like you've had 10 of them now, Leeto, where you don't have any. This is what happens. This is the scenario you would prefer to some kind of inequality. Inequality is so unacceptable that this is to be preferred. And incompetence rather than inequality.
No. I've always said we are the best thing possible to move and change South Africa. We're the best of us. And if we are nasty and petty to each other, then guess what you're doing? You're taking the decision-making process and what could be a proper sit down with people who have common sense and can make a solution. You then hand the power over to the idiots who then want to legislate something that nobody's going to be happy with probably. But the problem is that South Africans, at times we cede the power to the idiots who rule us. Because at the end of the day, most problems that South Africans have with each other, whether race-based or not, can be solved with South Africans sitting down and putting their heads towards a solution. But most South Africans still don't want to do that. And then the idiots come in, make sweeping legislations that seem unfair to one and not the other. And then what do the same South Africans do? And they whine, they cry, they complain. Instead of coming together. See, the farmers could come together right now, bring black and white farmers together and go to the court and show them we already have an agreement about what we do about water. We already are worried about water. Here's the science that we're studying about water. But what do? They revert back to the dumbness, the idiocy that feeds the idiots. You then revert back to it's because I'm white, it's because I'm black. And when we are
on the same page, and I can guarantee you that the black farmers will have exactly the same point of view as the white farmers in this respect. They'll say, we'd actually rather not have government involved. We'll sink our own boreholes. We'll manage our own water. We'll be communal with the other farmers. Most of them are. You have to be. If you're upstream, you have to be conscious of the people downstream. You know, part of the problem with this country, part of the reason we have cholera spreading is people shit in the river upstream, and then the people downstream get the cholera.
So,
right?
Yes. And nobody anywhere would rather have a government involved, right?
Of course.
But at the point at which you as people, the best solution to any problem, want to cede that power to them, you'll get decisions that are made by them in the way that they make decisions.
Okay. Pums, do you want to add anything? Because this is your area of expertise, and then we can move on.
Yeah, so we have come full circle.
Like half an hour on
it. And we have come full circle to a place where I'm saying this legislation that is being proposed is a proposal of a legislation. There is an opportunity for everybody to be part of how this legislation gets shaped so that it works for everybody. We would not be having this conversation if the water rights were equitable. We would not be having this conversation if people were benevolent and sharing the water. So the need to have the conversation exists. And this is a starting point. So if the ANC is putting a position down that says this is how we would like, it does not say that there is no opportunity. And as you all know, the way that legislation gets passed in this country is it gives every stakeholder an opportunity to make an input. But if we don't make those inputs, then we're going to end up with this kind of shit show.
All right. I couldn't agree more. Just one final word on this is that it doesn't matter what laws this government pass. This country is a free-for-all, as we've learned. So what's going to happen is whatever will happen. It's got nothing to do with the laws. People will sink their own boreholes anyway. They'll do it in suburban South Africa, and no one will even have a say to it because you just bribe the right official and you can get it done.
One of the things that does happen, which is what has happened with this particular conversation, is it's easy to polarize things in South Africa in terms of black and white. It's easy to make everything black and white.
In this case, it is actually something the law is intending to do.
Yeah, but can you hear me out? And the reason it is easy to reduce everything to black and white is because we come from an environment that has reduced us to black and white. So when legislation is being put, and this is, we have this conversation on the show as well, I say that is the reason why we need new people and new ways of thinking about how we solve our problems. We're not going to solve the problems we are in. And the reason we got into this problem is because we looked at it through the eyes of black and white. But if we continue to look at it in that way, we are never going to solve our problems. We have to have new thinking and new types of people in the environment in order to change it from that.
I want to talk about how I can't wait for Alan Winde of the Western Cape to arrest Vladimir Putin himself. I mean, clearly this is something that's going to happen. This guy is, and I keep talking about him because he irritated me so much during lockdown. Alan Winde is precisely the kind of politician who thinks that we are, I don't know if he thinks we're in France or in Germany or in, Democrat America, but he's going to go and arrest Vladimir Putin. What irritates me about him is that he has this pie in the sky idea that other South Africans are interested in the Ukraine and Russia like he is. And we've discussed this with Canton a couple of times. The average South African couldn't give a damn about Russia and the Ukraine. We're not interested. We don't want to spend a single second thinking about it. That whole Lady R thing, it may be a big international story for Naledi Pandor to deal with. It may eventually put us in a better or worse position. But most South Africans are so busy dealing with survival on a day-to-day basis that they are not interested in the Ukraine and Russia. And yet, Alan Wendy, John Steenhuisen keep talking about Russia as if it's a big, overarching national theme. It isn't. Am I right?
This is the tiff I had on Twitter with this man. This is what we were fighting about. And I even said...
Tell us more about this.
So the tiff starts with that, right? I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Like, South Africans don't care. And John Steenhuisen keeps harping on about this, right? And I say, this guy's not the leader we need at this moment. I was so mad. I said, John Steenhuisen is a trans man. And he said, what? I said, yeah, he's trans. Because, and this man was mad. I said, but John Steenhuisen is trans. Let me tell you why. In my opinion, right? As a black young man, I've been told all my life, if you need to be something and get somewhere, you need to go get an education and a qualification. And everywhere I go, every door I knock on, they ask, what are you qualified in? I say, a trans person, whether trans people are everywhere, they now have all pronouns. A trans person will tell you, hey, Gareth, I believe I'm a tree. You ask them, why do you believe you're a tree? What qualifying factors do you have? Do you have roots? Do you have leaves? Do you blow in the wind? Do you stand still all day? No, they have none of those qualifying features, right? Same thing as for a trans woman. They say, I believe. So they're a woman because they believe they're a woman. And John Steenhuisen is a leader because people believe he's a leader, and the people around him, not even everyone else. The people around him, his friends and family, and the people in the DA believe he's a leader. And so John Steenhuisen is trans. And that was the fight I was having, to say that man does not translate to the leader South Africa needs right now. At this very moment, the DA should be having some, because the ANC is very good at one thing, right? The ANC is very good at showing you the image they want, no matter how shitty their legislation is, right? They'll tell you, oh no, we're giving you 350 to alleviate poverty, right? And that's even though it doesn't make sense, how the 350 is going to alleviate poverty. They tell you that that's their picture of the world, that if you have 350 rand in your hand, you will somehow start an ice cream business that will lead you to become a millionaire. And that was the link they were making. None of the DA's proposals on what they do for governance tell South Africans what they will have or who they will be a year into their governance. No. Nothing. So at the moment, we're going into elections and we don't even know what the DA is trying to propose to us. What world are you proposing? Yes, we understand the ANC is shit. They are the worst of the worst. How can you not write a memorandum to say we are less shit than them? I mean, in a place like, let's take Welcome, for instance. We haven't had water for 10 days. All the DA has to do is to come out and say, literally print pamphlets that say, at least with us, you'll have water. That's all you need to say. Yet they don't do that. They don't capitalize on opportunities to show South Africans how they are intrinsically better than what we have right now. And at the end of it, they keep talking about bloody Russia and Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, and South Africans couldn't give a damn.
I keep hearing this, and I agree with you. I'm totally on your side about Russia and Ukraine. It's not relevant to South Africa, and I wish they would stop talking about it because nobody cares.
But it is.
No one.
But you know what? It is a great distraction for all of us. It is a great distraction to the fact that there is no water and maybe no plan of how to get water to people. All of this are great distractions because look at us. You know, we have just spent a good 30 minutes arguing about whether race should be a quota or not. We're having a conversation about Ukraine. And what we're not having a conversation about is we're not having a conversation about who are the people that can change the situation. Going into an election year, we're not having a conversation about the policies that are being advanced by an EFF. We're not having a conversation about the policies that are being advanced by a Rise Mzansi. We're not having a conversation about the IFP. We are having a conversation that is distracting us.
Even so from that.
Okay, so what should we?
That's what they're talking about.
I think that's a good point, Pums. But what should we be talking about then? Because here we have the opportunity here to talk for the next half an hour about anything that you want. What should we be talking about?
We should be talking about what is being advanced by everybody else other than the people that we complain about. But the problem is all the people also complain about all the things that we complain about. And instead of leading and being in the position where we're looking at them and saying, yeah, this is exactly the person I want to follow. Right. They're just part of us. They're just bitching along with us.
So we must, let's start with Herman Mashaba's book then, because he spent 12.5 million rand trying to explain to us what he stands for.
That's not what the book is about. The book is about him. It's not about what he stands for. It's about what he's done in the past. It's about Black Like Me and perms in the 80s.
So who are the adults that we need to listen to?
Who are the adults in the room?
No, who are the policymakers? Because we're always saying, oh, well, this party's no good and this party's all about image and this party's got nothing to do with legislation and ideas. There are definitely policies being promulgated. There are definitely parties that are sitting together with their chief whip and their strategists and all the rest coming up with ideas. And then we shoot those ideas down and we say you're not serious parties. The EFF is not policies. Julius said again in an interview just the other day with the BBC, which now almost everyone in South Africa has seen, he said we've got to nationalize all land, we've got to nationalize all mining, all industry. That's genuine. That's his policy. So let's take him at face value. Are those things that we really believe in 2023 are even worth taking seriously? Because you said we must take the policies seriously. That's not serious. You can't be serious.
But there are people who think that's a solution. And that's the thing. The thing we must take seriously is that how many people are starting to see that as a solution, right? But then on the other hand, I know you're going to lash me for this, but be reasonable for a second. For me, the person that we should be listening to, who's not being listened to enough this election, is Bantu Holomisa, right? When speaking about the Moonshot Pact and how the opposition should treat itself in ousting the ANC, he's the only one who's saying to everyone, why don't we have a unified manifesto? It doesn't have to be everything that we want all together, but what we want to achieve as an opposition, to sell to the people and say, if you vote for any opposition party, all of us would contribute whatever vote you give to us to these certain mandates, right? And then we'll fight it out afterwards. If you don't believe in land redistribution, that's fine. If you are the Freedom Front Plus and you don't believe in land redistribution, don't vote for it when it comes into the manifesto. Don't put it forward into the manifesto. Put whatever you want into the manifesto so that we put our energies towards that. Because if the opposition wins right now the way they are, the shit show that's happening in Johannesburg and Pretoria is what's going to be in South Africa. All of them trying to twerk for us, trying to show us which one is the best and which one looks the best, without actually doing the substantive work it takes to moving South Africa forward. So right now as South Africans, we should be demanding manifestos from these opposition parties. And if you're going to unite, you need to have a united manifesto, not a moonshot pact because we're together. We must stop the politics of moving the ANC out because they're the ANC.
But you bring up Bantu Holomisa, who has, sure, he's been part of some coalitions here and there. But Bantu, the whole reason that the UDM exists is for Bantu Holomisa's ego.
To have a job.
And he's not willing to sacrifice. So he's speaking with a forked tongue, because this is not a guy who's willing to throw in his lot with other parties and be part of the solution. Hell no. He wants to be, I'm Bantu Holomisa, I'm the UDM, I'm standing alone, I'm strong, I represent a different kind of South Africa. It's all in his head. Nobody gives a shit. The people who are voting for him are voting for him.
Whenever Bantu Holomisa has the opportunity to sidestep and stab you in the back, he will. That's his personality.
But so he mustn't talk to us about a manifesto. We know his manifesto. It's called Brutus.
No. He stabs you in the back while you're square dancing around him. If you keep waddling around him, he'll put that knife in you, right?
So
he's trying to say he's actually giving the remedy. No. He's giving the remedy to him not knifing you in the back. I think he's probably tired of it. He's saying, if we have a unified position, I can't stab you in the back on the things we all agreed to. But if we all come together because we are ousting the ANC and you waddle, I'm going to stab you in the back.
I'm with Pumi. We need new people. I'm sorry. There's nothing Bantu Holomisa. God bless him. And he's not a horrible person. I've met him a few times. We interviewed him on the show. I don't think he's a crooked, wretched politician of the worst kind. We have many more who are far worse than him in this country, but I'm so tired of him. I really am.
But who are these new
so
people?
here's what I'm interested in, Leeto. Because we haven't had this conversation with you. If you were to pick your top 3 priorities that you would like to see in a Moonshot Pact manifesto, what would those be?
1, unemployment alleviation. 2, a certain policy on a clear policy on participation of government and private sector. So, for instance, let me try to make that clear, because I know everyone likes to say private public participation. But what I mean is, are we going to have a Denel that is like DARPA in America, where the arms company just goes to companies around SA and say, you create nice alarm system companies, create this for the military industrial complex, right? And there's that symbiosis. Or are we going to have an outright country where the private sector has a much bigger role to play, like the medical field in America? So once those lines are clear, because the problem with South Africa right now is that nobody knows what to do and when. And so even when the private sector is trying to act, they don't want to encroach on government lest they step on a petty minister's toes and be blackballed, right? And then the final thing, I think the way we prioritize what we want to be as a country, nobody that we've ever had, no one has ever had a more than 20-year plan for South Africa. They only have the 5-year plan for themselves, and
Just by the way,
we re-elect them.
Your first point was to address unemployment.
Yes.
I think we've been down this road before. Can I just, for clarity's sake, because we're looking for practical solutions here, the only way for government to create employment is to get out of the way, right? Really?
Okay. Wait.
Really?
I was on your favorite employer's radio waves the other day, and talking about one of the ways in which the government can positively stand in the way, right? Something like the NYDA, and how it could be used as an intermediary to get young people in business, capitalize their ideas, and get them to be a bridge to something like the PIC, because the PIC,
since we were talking about examples, I'd like one example of where the NYDA has helped a young, talented black person to get ahead.
I ripped into them.
Just one.
Listen, I ripped into them. The CEO ran away during the interview. Okay, I'm well versed in knowing how to rip a new asshole into the NYDA. But what I'm trying to say is,
get in the way.
No, an NYDA led by people dedicated to helping others, right? There are people like that in South Africa. That white guy.
Where are these fairy tale people?
No. There are no fairy tale people. Don't say that. There's that. I don't know his name. You had him on the show before. The white dude in Cape Town helping communities with crime and trying to combat crime. So there are people who are dedicated to helping others. Ian Cameron. There are people in South Africa dedicated to helping other South Africans and have the mind to help other South Africans, right? And so I know, like, Vusi Tembekwayo is I hate him. I hate his guts. But as an example of somebody to help young people guide their business ideas, a person with the same kind of mentality for business as Vusi has at the head of the NYDA, not some freaking ANC Youth League flunky, right? And so that's the CEO we need at the NYDA.
Leeto, these organizations are designed and built to end up with politicians in leadership and not people who actually work. No one with any self-respect or with any drive and determination to start their own business is going to work at the NYDA. It would be a waste of their time. They would become very frustrated very quickly, and they don't want to be there. People who have their own businesses, and there are talented people in this country who have their own businesses, do not want to work for government, because government is just a big, disastrous, frustrating mess. They can never see their goals come to fruition while there is the machinery of things like the NYDA and the PIC. Why would people want to work within those confines when they can go and run a little mom and pop shop on the side and have a reasonably comfortable living, rather than having to fix the NYDA, which frankly, no, it's like fixing ESCOM. No one will get it right.
I know, but think about the potential. This is what I'm talking about, the potential of what that organization stands for, Gareth.
You're saying dream. You're saying dream a little bit.
We have to as South Africans. That's all we damn have. I dream of water all the time, okay? That's what we have. We have to dream, but also we need the dreamers. Like you said, right? Which self-respecting person who has a mind for business wants to go and engage with the NYDA and try to help?
No one.
Let's put the self-respect aside for a minute and try to be a citizen who encompasses others. I know you're self-respecting. I know you want to see the best for yourself, but that self-respect that you have is stopping you from realizing a much greater goal of being a citizen that is a leader. Because that's what a leader is. You don't have to be fucking twerking for votes to be a leader.
Pumi, what do you say? You've gone all quiet.
No, I love listening to Leeto because Leeto has two things. He engages with young people at university all the time, and these are the people who, in my dreams, that I think about and want to work with and bring into the environment of not just looking after themselves. For a long time now, South Africans have had to look after themselves. We've had to get our own solar system, get our own this, get our own that, buy your bottled water. And unfortunately, we are all interdependent. We are interconnected as a country and as citizens. And we need to change the perspective of South Africans about being self-sufficient in a country that is falling apart, and rather becoming sufficient for our country to not fall apart. I think, one of the things that I'm looking forward to with all of the new players, and it's counterintuitive, right? When you see lots of new players come into the political environment, is if you have a mindset that says there are only 18 million people who are registered to vote and only 12 million show up to vote. But the more we have diverse thinking in politics, in the form of new people with new ideas, you're potentially going to have more people interested in showing up to vote. Because the ones that are not showing up are simply saying, I'm not showing up to vote for these people that are here. But if we have new people with new thinking and fresh ideas of how to reconfigure what is happening in South Africa so that we can create a South Africa we want, then you will have more people engaging with the political spectrum, showing up to vote.
And by the way, Gareth, right? The way I'm talking about it, so look at the dedication. I have my qualms with AfriForum, whatever they may be, but the dedication that the members of AfriForum have to servicing their community to something greater, especially their volunteers. AfriForum volunteers show up, right? And South Africans, the reason why we're looking at something like the NYDA and we fail to show up because the ANC is there, it's like we're afraid of them. Right?
And they're using the other difference is the NYDA is using taxpayers' money to do nothing, whereas AfriForum are using contributions that their members are making over and above tax voluntarily, and they're getting things done. How embarrassing is this for the NYDA?
Right? And so I would rather have, so let's assume the NYDA has a part for young creatives. I'd rather have you and DJs Woo there assessing whatever proposals they have because of what you've done in the media space and how knowledgeable you are there in trying to capitalize young creatives. I'd rather have you there than anyone. So the issue here is that we don't show up to these places and scare the vultures away. We assume the vultures have the thing locked down, but they don't. Like I was following the show before I was in, you said all of them have dirty fingers. And so the smaller skeletons, when you show up as the real professionals, the people who know industry, the people who are willing to help others, they'll run away because they're afraid. the first thing they're afraid of, they'll try to bribe you and then they'll run away.
Yeah, but Leeto, what we really need is just competence, just like practical skills. I mean, I really think that we talk a lot in this country about having, some big moonshot pact or some big idea, or so going to the elections with new ideas and new players and manifestos. What we really need, what South Africa is desperately in need of at this point, is engineers, plumbers, electricians, people who can fix potholes, people who can repair lampposts on the road, people who can arrest people for doing bad things, people who can process prosecutions, like basic, job description stuff. We don't need more ideas. There are lots of ideas, and most of them are fairly okay until they're put into practice by bad people, and then they all fall apart. We just need in one word, competence. And I'm tired of seeing incompetence everywhere.
Yes, and you know why? The competent people, the people who know. I remember when you were back at the SABC, I remember you were campaigning to get one of your executive producers to be on the board, Thabo Modisane, I think his name is. I'll never forget that. But in my opinion, somebody like an executive producer on a show that's been there for years would be of much use to that board. And then, so that's what I'm saying. But the people who are most competent are not in the places they should be. You have somebody who's competent in the wrong place. You have Thabo Modisane who's competent, who would help the SABC board, and he's still stuck being an executive producer for Gareth Cliff.
But if you want to,
it benefits Gareth. So it benefits that one corner of the SABC where his greater mandate is to benefit the whole SABC.
I'm not going to go and work on the SABC board, and neither is Thabo Modisane, because we don't want to be stuck in talk shops all day with a bunch of useless, venal politicians who have no purpose in being there except to look to themselves. Why would anyone want
this
to
is what but this is what Leeto is advocating for. Leeto is saying
what's the incentive?
But Leeto is saying that if we can get 20 executive producers putting their hands up to be on that board, and various people of varying skills within the organization to be on that board, or within that industry sector to be on that board, then what you will have talk up with real politicians, but an actual board that understands what needs to happen to move a sector forward. That is what he is proposing.
Yes, you on that board. If Pravin walks onto that board while you were there, you're not going to look to twerk and impress him. You're going to tell him straight, this is what the SABC needs. We don't need you here every week. And if he becomes petty about it,
I will last a day, and then he'll set SARS on me and all kinds of other things that I don't need in my life. Now, just hang on.
The SABC would be better for it.
Please, I don't want to fix the SABC. As far as I'm concerned, it should crash and burn. It should, because it's a useless organization that's run very badly by people who don't know what they're doing. And when that happens, business die. I believe in the private sector, because you don't get any government bail.
The bottom line is, we the people, I should have been wearing my t-shirt today, we the people should not be afraid of politicians. Instead, the politicians should be afraid of us. At this particular moment, as South Africans, we are afraid of the politicians. We are afraid to hold them accountable. Well, you just said you'd be afraid to be on the board of an SABC because then Pravin would sick the SARS on you.
No, don't misunderstand me. Not afraid. Frustrated to the point where I wouldn't want to do it anymore, and there would be no way to see any kind of positive change happen there. These things are not in. Name me a country, guys, where the best people end up in government. There is no such thing. The best people don't want to go anywhere near government. Government is always for underachievers. Always.
But this is why I believe in South Africa. In the
civil service.
No, this is why I believe in South Africa more than anyone else. Because South Africans, we're not a convention, guys. We eat fat cooks in the morning, okay? So we can't compare ourselves to all of these other countries. We don't eat cereal in the morning. We eat fat cooks. We eat whatever. And so the same sort of grit that makes us South African for me is the same thing that gives me hope every single day that a South African will rise up to the occasion. And it frustrates me when they don't. But the way South Africans come together always gives me hope. And that's the only way we can beat these people, Gareth. The only way.
When are you going to stand?
I'm thinking about it.
Ready.
Really?
You are ready.
Yes, I really am thinking about it.
I think it's time, because I think it's time for you. There's no way I ever want to, and believe me, I toyed with the idea as a young man of going into politics, and I thought this could be somewhere I could make a real change, and I was idealistic about it and everything else. Now I'm like, no. I just want these people out of my life. I want nothing to do with politics. It would be the most frustrating thing ever, and I don't want to, as you say, twerk for votes or anything else. So you go ahead, Leeto. I will support you, because I'm more useful to you here doing this than I would be sitting in an ANC-based or an ANC-led SABC board. There's no way I could be useful there. I know my use, and you know yours. You're the kind of guy who can make it happen in your area, in your town, and you are more passionate about it than most people are. We need that.
The days of an ANC-led anything are numbered.
Over.
The days of an ANC-led anything are numbered. And all I'm ever going to advocate for is that as those days come closer and closer, we better have people willing to stand up and be in those positions. The days of the ANC-led anything are numbered. They're done. This organization is done. But if we the people, black and white, are not there to be part of what happens next, we're going to be just as fucked, with or without the ANC. In the same way that all those many years ago, I said to you guys that Jacob Zuma is not the problem this country has, but an organization of thieves and frauds and fraudsters is the problem. And y'all thought that Cyril was going to come in with the civil bullets, and here we are.
I didn't.
Here we are.
You, so no,
Yeah. If the ANC loses tomorrow, the rats are going to scatter and leave the ship. Who is going
and
to
they
fill
have
the
started.
spaces, Gareth? Yes. Who's going to fill the spaces? If the rats scatter from the board of the SABC, who fills the gaps?
You. They play. You mentioned Thabo Modisane, executive producer. God bless him. Yeah. He would be fantastic there. He must stand for it. But you can't go around convincing everybody that they need to enter what is at the moment a dead-end job in bureaucracy and talking. That's not what most people want to do. And you know what? Frankly, there's no amount of money you could pay some people to put up with that shit, because the incentives aren't to save the country or to fix institutions or any of that stuff. And if you're going to make those the incentives, you need to give people a real reason to believe. At this point, there are no reasons to believe that you could resuscitate ESCOM, SABC, Transnet, PRASA. The reason to believe is what you're looking for. Because then people will do anything. People will do anything for you.
We need to make those organizations just like Steenhuisen and make them trans organizations. We believe they're great, and so they'll make them great.
We have literally four minutes to go, and Leeto, I don't know if this is too big a question in the 4 minutes, and it's a complete touch of everything that we've been speaking about until now. Being in the academia and university circuit, what the hell is going on at Fort Hare? Do you know?
Yes, what is happening at Fort Hare? Wow, what a disaster.
No, not even at Fort Hare. In many universities, what the politicians and the tenderpreneurs and everybody else has seen is that there's still an opportunity to capture the logistics chains of universities. So that's where the next tender opportunity is going to come from, and so that's where the violence is coming from. Mangosuthu University had a similar thing with its residents, but also on another level, the politicians have also figured out that if you want to skirt the system to get a master's or a PhD, the university route is where you need to be. So if you plant former youth politicians in the councils of these universities, you can weasel yourself into a qualification of a kind. And so those problems have then compounded to corrupting what should be an incorruptible institution. And so the violence is coming from people trying to get tenders, trying to get all sorts of money from universities. They now know that a university is allowed to spend 12 million rand on transportation of students. And so they'll fight for that, and they'll kill a vice chancellor or his security guards for it. And on the other hand, politicians have figured out that you can weasel your way into a master's and PhD degree by being close to a council of a university. And at the very least, you can get yourself an honorary doctorate, like everyone is doing. Like the CUT has actually decided to stop giving out honorary doctorates for now and actually reevaluate what the value of an honorary doctorate is.
Jeez, what a mess. And so, why are things being burnt down? I mean, we saw there was a fire there this week.
No. So the burning down would be, so what people often do is to take hungry students, give them 30,000 rand, 40,000 rand, 50,000 rand, and tell them to initiate a strike and burn something. And a hungry person will do anything for that kind of money. And so what we're seeing is people trying to take their evil, nefarious business purposes and using young people as weapons.
Sure.
What do you think?
That is a very succinct explanation. Thank you.
What do you think the future of tertiary education is if it's become so clouded by, who you know and what you can get done and political sway and corruption? Do you think a degree is going to be worth anything in like 5 to 10 years?
It still will be, because the ones with conviction are holding. The people at these universities that really care about education are holding. And the VC at Fort Hare doesn't care. He said, you can't shoot me. The only way to get me out and to stop pursuing people like Oscar Mabuyane is to kill me. You can kill as many bodyguards as you want. I'm going to pursue you. If you've taken money from the institution unjustly, I'm going to pursue you. At the Central University of Technology right now, they are disbanding the council because of activities that don't support the forward movement of the university, because of the staff inside the university. So there are people who are willing to stand and call out and make a noise to the point at which you get the corrupt out. We are the surgical knives that cut out the cancer. It doesn't cut itself out. And unfortunately, it's come to a place where you have to stand being killed, being threatened, having your family threatened in order for you to see justice. But I'm always for somebody who'd stand like that for justice. I'll be always on their side. And I'm happy to see the VC for Fort Hare is doing that. And I'd support him to the hilt.
I absolutely love that. We are the surgical knives that cut out the cancer.
I like that too. I like that. That's our theme. We're labeling that as the episode for this morning. We are the surgical knives that cut out the cancer, Leeto. We're borrowing it from you. We'll give you credit. Thank you very much for being on the show again. As always, fascinating time talking about all kinds of things. We bounced around quite a lot today. Glad we got that university question in, Pumi, at the end, because that's very, very valid and relevant at this point. And we will catch up again next week. Same time, same place. Have an excellent Thursday, everybody. Cheers.